have the lovely pleasure of speaking with my hubby today, who is a jack of all trades, really. He's such a phenomenal human being. And so today we're just going to talk a little bit about him, his past, where he's going, and things that he has working on. So without further ado, my beautiful, wonderful husband, Terrell Lambert, how are you today, babe?
I'm doing good. I got the day off.
So let's talk about like your history and like growing up. You played football basically your entire life. How do you feel like football prepared you for life after playing professionally and like fatherhood and all that sorts of things?
Oh, tremendously. I think you'd be hard pressed to find another team sport that mimics life quite like football.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you got so many different situations in the game that mimic life. Like I play defense, so the offense gives up something suddenly, or if it's like a block punt, block field goal, and all of a sudden the opposing team's on the goal line about to score. In football, we call that sudden change, but in life, we call it adversity. You got to be able to adapt and adjust on the fly, just from a standpoint of structure and order, especially when you're dealing with young men. Their big ball of energy is going to be directed somewhere, so you might as well put in something that's productive, that's going to benefit the world and not harm it. I could have put that same energy into something totally negative and we wouldn't even be having this conversation.
So football saved you in a way.
1,000%.
When you think about like life transitioning from football into now being a firefighter, how do you feel like things are similar, things are different? Do you feel like it prepared you at all for firefighting? How was that transition?
I would say it prepared me from a standpoint of adaptability. There's so many things and situations that occur on the fire ground that we train and we drill for, but everybody has a plan until they get hit in the mouth. And a lot of it is being able to recover. And I was just fortunate enough to play a position where everything we do was about recovery, because we're always a step behind the receiver. He knows where he's going and I don't. So I got to figure that out and then make up ground. So that was the thing that intrigued me the most about the fire service, and having that the ability to adapt on the fly and to recover from a bad situation. You know, you train in ideal sterile conditions, but in the heat of the moment, you can't really simulate the elements, the anxiety and the emotions around it. You know, being in a situation like, okay, this is definitely life or death.
Yeah.
You know, having comrades that have been burned up in fires and experienced injury, experienced loss. Some have lost their lives, some have lost their comrades' lives. So it definitely prepared me as far as adaptability and being able to recognize those situations and act and pull the trigger, as they say.
When it comes to this channel, it's for postpartum mamas, right? So tell me a little bit about your experience postpartum, watching me go through it, and if you have any advice for other men who are watching their wives go through it, because for me, it was very hard transition. And you saw me just kind of in a depression and just losing my identity and so many things. What would you say to men going through that possibly situation? And then how was it for you going through that from a male's perspective?
It was tough. It was tough to watch. I mean, in hindsight's always 2020. I didn't know it at the time, but looking back, it's frustration on both sides because your body has gone through this dramatic change and you feel like a shell of a person. So when you look in the mirror, you know, you don't see a lioness anymore. You see a hippo or a kitten, you know.
Right.
But we don't have the same blinders on as your counterpart. So I'm watching you go through that and I'm like, what's wrong with her? Like, she's glowing, she's beautiful. It's the longest her hair has ever been. It's curly. Like, what you tripping on? Like, but it's not until you go through it that you know, now I know how to act accordingly. It's like, okay, my wife feels like a shell of herself. So once I came to that realization, I know after we had McCurry, when Jasiri came, I was like, okay, what can I actively do on my end that'll reassure my wife that she's just as attractive and beautiful as she's always been, and really become sensitive to those things so that I could pick up on it like, oh, okay, it's one of those days. Like, well, let me do this, let me do that. Any husbands that find themselves in that position, I would just say, don't take it personal. It has everything to do with how your wife feels about herself and nothing to do with you as that person.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, for a lot of women, I learned just watching you go through that process and the women that you help. It's a situation where for a lot of them, they wonder how their mate is even still with them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because some of them feel as if they even don't deserve it, which is preposterous on our side. But for you, it resonates with every woman that's ever been pregnant and experienced that type of depression. So
Yeah.
it's a sensitive subject.
For sure. And I think it's different for all different women. Like some women have a beautiful postpartum period, some are depressed, some have, some feel like things are going great. And so for me, it was challenging. I know for a lot of women that I help, it was very challenging. I think especially being like active and always having like your body looking a certain way, I think it's just a hard transition. But seeing it from your side is so beautiful to just hear. And ladies, I want to encourage you that your husband sees you as such a beautiful being after having a baby. And even if you don't feel great, they still love you and they appreciate you so, so, so much. And I just think about like from your perspective, like you're looking at me going through a hard time, but you're like, you just gave birth to probably the greatest gifts I've ever received.
Literally.
Yeah. And so it's just like a mind shift thing. And it takes time to really get through it for sure. But I think I had to go through that really hard postpartum with our first son because now I can take that experience and help other women. And so it was like a necessary experience I had to have. But thank you for sharing that. I don't think we hear enough of the men's perspective, so I love that you were able to share that, babe. Thank you.
Yeah.
And what do you have coming forward, coming next? I know you're obviously firefighter full-time, but what's brewing? What's happening? You're also an author, so tell us a little bit of all the stuff you're working on.
So by prompting from my wife, and shout out to one of my best friends, Leo.
Leo, we love you.
Yeah, he's in North Carolina, enjoying his family with his wife and daughter. That was my old college teammate, but he put the bug in my ear to create content that gives some insight to the life of not just a firefighter, but a guy, that's multifaceted. I never looked at my life as anything that would be remotely interesting to anybody else. I know people just worry about themselves.
So humbled.
I know I do. But you talk to most people, it's like, well, he don't pay my bills or she don't pay my bills. What am I gonna be concerned about him for? So between firefighting, coaching, publishing my own written material, started off writing poetry. I began that at 16. It's materialized into writing sci-fi novel, a 3-part sci-fi novel that's gonna be coming out. It started off as just a way to vent. I mean, even now, just sitting in front of this camera is difficult. A lot of people don't know that one of the things that I love the most about playing football was that I always had a security blanket on the helmet, and like nobody could see me. It's like that kid in class that always want to keep his mask on so that he could feel secure. So it really just allowed a space for me to be vulnerable and really convey my thoughts. That's how it started out, but then it's something over time that I developed a skill and a love for. So if I benefit from it, I think other people can too.
Yeah.
So here I am. I'll be making my own content soon. I haven't figured out what I'm gonna call it. But
probably doing some workouts because all men are always asking you for workouts.
Yeah, it'll be all that jazz. I found a method that works for me, and maybe it can help other people.
Yeah,
That's what it boils down. That's what it boils down to. If it works for you, beautiful. If not, then hey, you can scroll down.
It will help so many men, and I'm so excited to have you step into entrepreneurship and the light, and so people can experience you. But thank you so much for speaking with me today. I know it's not your favorite thing to talk in front of the camera. But ladies, let me know your thoughts on this episode. Put your comments down below. Make sure you tap and subscribe. I'd love to hear your husband's point of view as well during the postpartum period. Hopefully this blessed you, and we'll see you next time.